Hello, class. My name is Raphael Ward, and this presentation is called Choosing a Software Platform. This is for class ITT 640 at Grand Canyon University. And today we're going to discuss choosing the software platform. There are many of them out there, and at the end of this presentation, I'm going to provide the one that I would personally choose. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. All right. The first one we're going to look at is called the waterfall model. So what exactly is the waterfall model? Okay, the waterfall model is a linear, sequential approach to the software development lifecycle. This model uses a logical progression of steps for a project. The endpoints for each step or phase are distinct and must be completed before the next phase can begin. Now, that last line is very important because this is what makes or break this particular platform. There are 7 steps to the waterfall model, and from step 1 on, each step must be completed because the next step takes the results from the previous step. So it has to be completed. Okay. This model has been around for a long time. It started in construction, and then now it's in software development, but it's still around, so a lot of people still use this. Okay, and speaking of the 7 phases of the waterfall model, the first phase is called requirements. Requirements, deadlines, and guidelines for the project are analyzed in this particular phase and placed in a formal requirements document. This particular phase of development defines and plans the project without mentioning specific processes. Okay, and that's phase 1. Because phase 2 is analyzed. The specifications are analyzed to create product models and business logic to guide production. Financial and technical resources are audited in this particular phase for feasibility. So now you gather your requirements, and now you're going to analyze things to start creating product models. And so we're moving right along to design, which is the 3rd phase. This phase is where the design specification document is created with the purpose of outlining technical design. This includes programming language, hardware, data sources, etc. Now this is where you begin to design. You're gonna start having to create the product model, which leads you into the next phase. It's called coding and implementation. You see how each step moves to the next step. You did the analyze, you did the design, and now you're working on the coding and implementation. Once the design phase is completed, the coding and implementation phase can begin. This phase takes the specifications designated in the design phase and use that to develop the source code. So that phase is where your source code is developed, which takes us into the next phase, which is testing. So once the coding is done, then the testing can begin. This is where any issues are identified and must be resolved before you can move to the next phase. Once the testing is passed, the waterfall continues. And the next phase is called operation and deployment. The application is fully functional and is deployed in a live environment. You have your application on the floor, people are using it. It is fully tested. There's no more changes being made. And the only next phase is called maintenance. This phase is kind of indefinite because anything breaks, anything needs updating, anything needs improving, happens in this phase. All corrective and adaptive maintenance are done in this particular phase in updates and in product enhancement. Okay. And that's the waterfall model. Now, custom software versus off-the-shelf software. Which one is better? We're going to look at the pros. Custom software is very scalable. That means as your business grows, you can add to the product, you can change it, you can make it different because you own the source code and you can do what you want with it. You have a competitive edge on your rivals because you're not using, somebody else's software because you can manipulate this software, it's yours. And it allows for faster growth as well for that same reason. Now the pros for off the shelf is you have lower upfront costs because that custom software, the project that's going to create it, whether it's a waterfall project or Azure project or whatever it is, it's going to be expensive because it's going to be a lot involved in that. You're going to have to pay an entire project, a manager, and the entire staff. So you, with the off-the-shelf software, you have a lot lower upfront costs. You have a much faster implementation. Custom software can take months to implement. And I've seen custom software even take a few years in development stage. You have a faster implementation, and you also have familiarity, because with off-the-shelf software, you may have people that's already know the software. There's no training involved. With custom software, you're going to spend a lot of time training users on how to use the software. So with off-the-shelf software, they may already know how to do it, so the training won't be as much. They'll be a lot more familiar with it. And those are the pros. Skip the cons and won't let me get back to it. So I'm going to do that slide last then. So we're going to just continue and go to DevOps versus Agile. Okay, DevOps unite the development and operations team using automation for continuous deployment. And that's the thing about DevOps, it is huge on automation. That's the main piece of it. Okay, and principles are culture, automation, learn principles, measuring, and sharing. As for Agile, Agile process uses the approach that quickly and effectively evolves to respond to customer needs. And that's the biggest benefit of the Agile process. It's very flexible. Principles are people, customer collaboration, working software, and reactive deployment. All right. And moving right along. So this is what I was talking about. My choice will be the Agile method for these reasons. It's less prone to error. Waterfall relies heavily on initial requirements, the initial requirement phase. In that way, you can't make any mistakes, because if you make a mistake, the entire thing is going to have issues. And it cannot be readdressed. The Agile method is also more flexible. Agile builds a working version so the customers can shape and make changes. Once a step has been completed in Waterfall, it's extremely difficult to make changes. And with Agile, you can actually have the customers using that particular software and giving feedback. And that's a huge benefit to that. It's more predictable. You have a more predictable end product than the Waterfall method. The product is tested at the end, and that's not good. With Agile, testing occurs regularly. Agile is more open to changes and additions, and it's more customer involvement. And my assumptions for reaching those decisions, my company is a healthcare company. And with the Agile method, the nurses will have a chance to use and test the software early and give their recommendations or feedback on what to add or take away, making the product the best it can be in the eyes of the nurses. Because at the end of the day, your software is as good as the people that use it, how much they like it. If they don't like it, they're not going to use it, and it's not going anywhere. I've worked in a hospital for 20 years, and if the nurses don't like a product, trust me, it will not be used. So the nurses with the waterfall method, the nurses will get the finished product, and it's impossible, almost impossible to make changes to it, and have feedback input it from the nurses. Okay, let me see if I can get back.